Hi everybody, this is Val, making another video on my channel that apparently is called Val. I do plan to brand this channel a little better than that, but right now I'm not exactly sure what direction to go in. I might call it Butterfly Language because the name of my blog is Butterfly Language, and which you can visit at butterflylanguage.com. Link in the description box. And basically, Butterfly Language and what I'm interested in is pop culture and the metaphysical and esoteric and how they sort of combine in different ways. Two of my favorite topics. For a long time, I thought I had to just pick one, and I decided, I was like, kind of like, I need to pick one and just focus on it for the rest of my life. And then I was like, you know what? Let me do both. How does that meme go? Like, why not both? So I'm doing both. So I did a couple of like strictly more kind of comic book topics the last couple of videos. So now I want to do something more on the esoteric. And I'm going to call this video, I think, 5 of my favorite strange books. Or 5 of my favorite weird books. Because I feel that these adjectives, strange and weird, are kind of whimsical and sound a lot better and less scary and less algorithm awful than like 5 of my favorite conspiracy books. So no, not at all. These books are not 5 of my favorite conspiracy books. 5 of my favorite weird books. They're weird. But also I'm trying to frame this video in a way that, if you're not familiar with esoteric books and, you might just be dipping your toe into the rabbit hole for the first time, this is more like kind of like an intro. So I'm covering books that I feel are accessible to the newbie. And that, are like good intros, stuff that you can try, but not feel like you need to take a shower after reading. That's really the goal here. And so I'm going to cover 5 of them. And if this turns out good, I might do separate videos down the road, specifically on specific books I've mentioned and authors. But for right now, this is just going to be a fun potpourri. So I'm just going to dive right into it. My first book, weird book, is called, I'm going to get this right-left thing eventually. I had problems with my left and right, until I was like 8 or 9 years old, seriously. So this whole camera thing, I'm still getting used to it, but bear with me. I'm so unprofessional. Oh my God. So this book is called The Gods of Eden, and it's by a man named William Bramley. And, I'm learning how to do this. I turn it this way. Great. So, Gods of Eden by William Bramley. And this book, I think, was published around 1989. It's a pretty mainstream book. It's published by mainstream book publisher Avon. And it's written by a guy who I think William Bramley was a lawyer, who said that one day he just wanted to know why humans tended to go to war all the time. Why were they so warlike? Why were they always picking on other people? There seems to be this big pattern throughout history. And, why? So he decided to go to the library, because this is before mainstream internet, go to the library and just research the history of humankind. And try to find out, why are humans so warlike and nasty to each other and all this sort of stuff? And so after doing all this research, his ultimate conclusion, and I'm going to spoil it for you because it's, if you can't tell what his ultimate conclusion is based on the cover of this book, his ultimate conclusion is that we are a slave race controlled by extraterrestrials. That is the conclusion he came after doing tons and tons of research. This is his conclusion. So already you're thinking, all right, so this book is batshit crazy. But, all right, let's back up a sec. Okay. I feel that you can, even if you don't buy the premise of this book or the ultimate hypothesis of this book, you can read this and just like sort of read just the research he's done on just the history of, like, you know, governments, mankind, wars, stuff like that. A number of people have said that, like, you know, you can read this book like up to like 2/3 in just for that and get something out of it, and then at the end be like, no. No. We're definitely not, aliens are not controlling us, and, you know, we're not a slave race of human cattle and stuff like that. I'm sorry, but you are mistaken. So you can dive into this book and in like 2/3 this, you know, like get some good stuff from here, like some good insight about the way humans treat other humans and these patterns, which is something I'm actually very interested in. You know, like I want to know more the big picture of why people treat each other horribly and keep going to war and stuff like that. And I think there are really good insights in here. But like I said, at the end, it's a big Steven Spielberg fest in the end of this book. So that is where, you know, you may decide to continue down the rabbit hole or not. But the book is very readable. Like I said, it was a very mainstream book when it came out. I think it's influenced tons of authors and tons of people, like, you know, screenwriters and movie makers and that sort of stuff. Like that's, I think in a previous video I was talking about, you know, the X-Files and how the X-Files, you know, came out in the mid-90s, and it sort of borrowed from all this fringe stuff about UFOs and conspiracies from like the late 80s to the early 90s. And this book is a perfect example of that. So The Gods of Eden by William Bramley, it shouldn't be that hard to find. I think you can get a used copy cheap. I might be wrong. But there you go. So this book, I love this book. What do I personally think? You might be asking as you're like taking notes on me, going, I see. I keep an open mind. But I will say right off the bat that I think there are two broad categories of conspiracy theorists or conspiracy theories. There are literal theories that are about literal conspiracies. And so like, you'll have a synchronicity or something like that, and you'll go, well, this is because like a cabal created this. Like there were people, and it's this whole big, it's like a concrete thing that if you found the proof for, you know, you could show it, it's concrete. I tend to be more of a quantum theorist in that I think there are a lot of things we just don't know, and I think there's a lot of things that are vague and sort of like kind of like Schrodinger's cat, like, you know, alive and dead at the same time, like we don't know. And I'm pretty happy to feel like, to admit that I don't really know. I keep an open mind, you know, but I think whatever the truth, you know, the truth is out there, whatever the truth is probably weirder than most of us can really conceive of. That's pretty much what I think. And I could be wrong, but that's, now I've committed this to video. That's just going to be great. I'm never going to be president now. Or am I? Because, all right. Next book, let's see. The next book is The Cosmic Trigger by Robert Anton Wilson. A book I believe was written in the early 70s. This book, I'll just say, like I know the title of this video is kind of flip, like, you know, my 5 favorite strange and weird books. But I mean, to be honest, like this is my favorite book of all time. This book is so influential on me that it's like, my life was day and night before and after I read this book. And basically, Robert Anton Wilson was a philosopher, a futurist, I think a comedian, an author, fiction, nonfiction author, who just, he popularized to an extent a lot of these sort of conspiracy tropes, like, you know, but like in a humorous way. And in that way of, like I just spoke of, like, you know, he is happy to admit he doesn't really know what the truth may be, and that the truth may be weirder than we suspect. And I love that approach. And, within that approach is a certain skepticism, but is a playful skepticism. And that type of philosophy has really served me well in terms of studying the esoteric and metaphysics, which is always like, I think he said something like, like belief, like a belief is the end of knowledge or something like that. Like he was always kind of like cautioned against sort of blind belief in things. But also to be open enough to be playful and to ask a lot of questions. And so this book is like a biographical book, but also it's about like 1,000 different weird events and conspiracies. And it's like a nexus book of weird and esoteric stuff. And I love recommending these types of books to people because it's sort of, they're accessible and they lead you down like 500 different rabbit holes, and you can choose to go down those rabbit holes or not. And The Gods of Eden, that other book, one day I'm gonna, that other book, The Gods of Eden, is another, what I would call like a nexus type book that has like, it's like a meta theory book. It has so many different rabbit holes you can go on. To research further. And so, I mean, this book talks about coincidences, synchronicities, psychedelics, aliens who give people pancakes, all sorts of stuff. And it's about a weird period in Robert's life, Bob's life, where it was between him sort of quitting, like he had a cushy job at Playboy, editing at Playboy. And he sort of moved away from that and moved towards sort of what he ended up becoming, which was more just like a strictly an author, a philosopher, a lecturer, a teacher. And that weird middle time between the decision to kind of like leave more the conservative world behind and embrace just the full weirdness. And he just talks about all the synchronicities that have, that were taking place and just in his life and weird stuff and just, how he was growing and how people around him were growing. And, it really is a book that deserves its own video. And I have a picture of, I'm fangirling here over Robert Anton Wilson. This is too much. But I have a picture of him right here. Can you see that? That's Robert Anton Wilson. And yeah, he's my favorite author. And I started reading stuff about 10 years ago. And yeah, I can't recommend this book enough. And like really, like, yeah, it's very accessible as an intro to his work, and it's a lot of fun. And I think that more people, should pick up his work and rediscover his work. So, Cosmic Trigger. Next book is another favorite author of mine. I'm sorry. I'm just so goofy. I'm such a goofy person. Like, one of the, before I was a writer and an editor and all this other stuff, I really wanted to be like a life coach, but I thought it was just too goofy to be a good life coach. But that is neither here nor there. But yeah, my goofiness just seems to come out in leaps and bounds. And what will my mom say? I don't know. But anyway, here is Philip K. Dick's UBIK, or UBIK. I think it's UBIK. It's a novel. I think he also wrote in the early 70s. You will find a pattern in most of these books that they were written in the early 70s. And I have a post on my blog, Butterfly Language, about a lot of weird stuff that happened with authors from like the early to mid 70s. And there's definitely a pattern there. There's something, it may be something in the water. It may be those aliens Bramley was talking about. I don't know what it was, but a lot of weird shit was being written during that time period. So UBIK is about, and it's fiction. This book is fiction. The other two books I've covered so far are theoretically nonfiction. This book is fiction. It's a science fiction novel, and it starts off like a very cliche. I'm not trying to put down the novel, but I mean, it starts kind of like a cliche science fiction novel of like the 50s and 60s in a way, or the 60s at least. Um, like it's got all the tropes. And then at some point, about a third or less into the book, the narrative just stutters, and we're in a complete, and within one sentence, we're in a completely different situation. I'm not trying to spoil it, but this is a book about warping the different realities. And what is so brilliant about what Dick did with this book is that through his writing, like, he made us feel that lack of equilibrium, that dissonance of reality suddenly changing like that. Thanos not. There you go. And that's why, and it's so stunning, and it gives you a visceral reaction when you get to it. And then it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder from there. And it's like you really feel like not just your emotions are being manipulated, but like your mind's being manipulated by how the weirdness of how the narrative bends and changes. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's definitely, like, you're looking for a mindfuck book. This is like really a great mindfuck book. And, like some of Dick's later works that I'm more familiar with, that I've reread several times, like VALIS. Those are also mindfuck books, but I find them, like VALIS, I like VALIS more than this, but VALIS is less accessible. And the thing you have to know about VALIS is that, and I don't want to spoil VALIS for you, but that's pretty much, everybody knows this about this book already. VALIS is a book that seems like a science fiction novel, and then Dick stops dead in the, again, like a third into the book, and it's just like, well, this is actually something that really happened to me. Like, he breaks the fourth wall, and you're like, oh my God. So, whereas this book is positioned as fiction, it's pure fiction, when you get to those later books, it gets really weird. So if you're just starting to read Philip K. Dick's work, I would start with this, because it spoon feeds you. It takes you in slowly, like baby steps, and, but you go into something like VALIS, it's like, I want to recommend VALIS, but it's not for beginners. It's not for beginners, but this is a good one to start with. This book has been referenced in Bandersnatch, the Netflix Choose Your Own Adventure movie. It's been referenced there. This book has been referenced in Lost. And I'm sure by now, with all these types of movies like, Inception and stuff like that, you're used to these, or Memento, these weird sort of looping narratives. So it's like, it wouldn't be something, so you wouldn't think it's something new to you, but it's different when you're reading it in a book like this, and how it mindfucks you. I can compare it to H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft is another guy. I'll read his books, and it affects me at a visceral level, And so if you want to start, reading some Philip K. Dick, I highly recommend this book, UBIK. The next book is on a topic that I've been covering on my blog lately. And it's probably it's about one of the first esoteric conspiracy type topics I've ever was interested in. And that was from when I was around 11 years old. And it's about the rumor that started in the late 60s that Paul McCartney had died in a car accident and was replaced by a double. And this whole rumor, one of the key sort of texts or documents about, this rumor is, it was a radio show, I think by a guy named Dave Fox. And I remember when I was 11 years old, I listened to a replay of this radio show, at 12 o'clock midnight with my little, not even a Walkman, just a radio with one little earbud, headset or something plugged into my ear. And this radio show about this topic scared the living shit out of me. It literally starts with this scary music, is Paul McCartney dead? And I was so obsessed with that topic after that. And so this book by R. Gary Patterson is a really good overview of that rumor. I'm not sure when this book was written. I think it was in the, not that long ago, mid-90s. Mid-90s. And I like this book because the book is written, it's written by someone who hasn't drank the Kool-Aid on this conspiracy topic, but who also is not like shaping the whole book as like a scold against the rumor, if you know what I mean. You know, he takes what, again, that sort of Robert Anton Wilson playful attitude. And R. Gary Patterson, he's written another book about the occult and rock and roll. And the original title is Hellhounds on Their Trail, but I think that book has since been reprinted with a different title. If you find this book, that book is amazing. And so he has a really good knowledge of metaphysics and esoteric. And he interprets a lot of the Paul is dead rumor in terms of mythology and archetypes. And that's my bailiwick. I love that. I love that stuff. And so, you know, this book, it's a great introduction to a conspiracy theory like that. You know, it contextualizes it. It, you know, says, well, this thing, they say, not true. This thing over here, not true. But then he'll go like, you know, but there's some weird things over here, you know, and like there's mythological aspects, collective unconscious aspects, you know, quantum aspects, which is the stuff that I'm interested in. So this is just a really fun read. And I will put a link to my own Paul McCartney post in the description box. But yeah, if you want to just like read this like something weird, but not drinking the Kool-Aid, but it's a lot of fun, definitely pick this book up. And my last book, wow, this went really fast. I'm so proud of myself because like I was advised to like, I should do shorter videos. Like I should do shorter like snack-sized videos. But I should. And but I haven't done that so far, but I'm really trying. But I'm really making good pace here. So like maybe like we could just chat at the end of this video and just whatever. Last book I'm going to recommend is called The Spear of Destiny, which you can't see very well because I have the Strand bookstore from New York, the good old Strand, sticker on it. This is A Spear of Destiny by a man named Trevor Ravenscroft. Ravenscroft. It's a pretty awesome name, right? Sounds like a video game name or something. Trevor Ravenscroft. And this book, surprise, I believe was also written in the early 1970s. And it was a bestseller. And it was a mainstream best-selling book. And you're going to see why this is problematic in a second. And it's a book about this icon called the Spear of Destiny, which supposedly was a spear that had, in biblical times, pierced the side of Christ. And that the spear was passed down from, you know, era to era, from kingdom to kingdom, and whoever owned the spear, you know, would be in power, would have that sort of extra luck and power and authority. And how the spear over time made its way to Adolf Hitler. And the whole story follows this young Adolf Hitler, you know, complete horrible misfit, didn't bathe, everything like that. And how he had this whole plan that like one day he would get the Spear of Destiny. And then it goes into like he was part of a conspiracy of occultists, and it gets into Star Wars Darth Vader shit. Now, and mind you, this book that was written in the early 70s, I have no doubt in my mind that George Lucas read this book or knew of this book. And because it was it was a bestseller, it was extremely mainstream. And the story of Hitler in this book is like Anakin Skywalker. And so there's like this wild story about, you know, him getting the spear, but also him doing drug rituals and occult rituals, and just this battle, this great battle of good and evil forces, like esoteric forces during World War II. And then it gets into like, it just sort of just drops the narrative altogether and gets into lots of metaphysics and Rudy Steiner and stuff like that. And it is just a wild, wild narrative. But out of all the books that I'm talking about here, this is the most problematic, and I will. It requires critical thinking because here's the problem. And the first time I read this book, probably like over 12 years ago, it didn't quite sink in what the catch is with this. But the second time I reread it, I basically Trevor Ravenscroft claimed that he got the story from this guy. I forgot his name, but like this guy who was like childhood friends with Hitler, right? And this is how we got the story, and it's the secret story, and the guy told him stuff before he died, and all stuff like that. But then somewhere, and again, it's like about 1/3 into the book, I think, Ravenscroft says, well, I didn't really actually talk a lot to this guy and get this information. I used something called imaginative cognition. Used what? I used imaginative cognition to get this information from this guy from beyond the grave. So what I'm trying to say here is that most of this, 2/3 of the stuff in this book that's presented as historical fact, I believe Ravenscroft got from imaginative cognition. So that's problematic because a lot of people consider this book a history book of World War II. And so a lot of the stuff claimed here is not backed up by anything other than imaginative cognition. And this is problematic. You know, it's problematic because here you have a book that mainstream bestseller. I think this book influenced George Lucas. I think it influenced David Lynch with his whole Black Lodge thing and Twin Peaks. I mean, this book influenced tons of comic book writers. Tons. But, you know, it's based largely on something called imaginative cognition. And, you know, the problem with that, like, for me, it's fun to read because it's a fun batshit read. And it's, again, one of these books that are like matrices to, like, so many other rabbit holes and things, you know, and it's just a really gripping, batshit insane read. But, you know, the problem becomes when people take this book literally and think this is the literal history of World War II. And so, I mean, there is a problematic, it's just a small problematic aspect to this book. And so, yeah, out of all the books I've recommended, like, this is the one where you need to, like, have not just a grain of salt, you need like a boulder of salt with you when considering this book. But yeah, highly influential book, extremely weird. And yeah, it's like you'll read this and you'll be like, oh, this is the story of Darth Vader. And that's the other problematic thing about it. And I find that with some of the fiction and nonfiction and weird things in between about this time period is that, you know, Hitler is the theoretical villain of this book and is the non-theoretical villain of World War II. But, you know, it's, you know, this is the type of thing that kind of, you know, I'm not saying it romanticizes some of this stuff, but it just gets into this weird place where, you know, you need to have critical thinking to read it. I mean, ultimately, Hitler is portrayed as a smelly, racist, awful, murderous human being, but also has cool magical powers. I mean, literally magical. I mean, this book goes there. There's like ectoplasm. There's everything. So that's the story about this book. So if you want a really strange read, yeah, this book will do it. And I will leave a link to my book review of The Spear of Destiny in the description box. So, oh my gosh, I got through it. I'm so psyched. And thank you all for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, won't you please subscribe? And thank you for your nice comments. And I plan to do a lot more. My cat's going bananas in the other room. I'm going to have to leave soon. But just thank you for just the support. I love doing this. I love talking to you about these topics that I'm so passionate about. And I hope to do a lot more in the future. I take requests. And just have a great day, and I will chat with you later. Bye.